I think a way to bootstrap that or force yourself to grow is to immerse yourself in these, experiences where people are coming together and learning from each other and teaching each other. You're inevitably also going to not only meet the people, but be exposed to the way that they problem solve and approach challenges. And that is so important.
Hello and welcome to the AI Master Group podcast, featuring the people who are building the future of AI in their work today. I'm your host, Jim Griffin. Today I'm really happy to have a very special guest, Sam Marks, who is the Director of Business Strategy and Analytics with the Boston Bruins and TD Garden. And prior to that, Sam had directed strategy and analytics for the Arizona Coyotes, with strategy roles at companies before that, including VaynerMedia. Sam, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you, Jim. It's very exciting to be here, and I appreciate you having me.
Yes, I know a lot of people that are listening will think that, hey, here's somebody with a dream job. You get to be in charge of strategy and analytics for sports teams. How did he do this? So it's interesting. I imagine that there's some things about doing analytics and strategy for sports teams that are different from other companies, other corporations, and some things that are quite the same. I wonder if you could help me understand what are the things that are similar and maybe some of the things that might be a bit different for a role like yours.
Certainly. Well, first, I like to start by clarifying. I'm sure many people might have read, the book Moneyball. That's not what I do. I actually have very little to do with what's happening on the ice or the field or the court. And as you alluded to, I've actually moved around to a couple different sports, doing similar roles in my career. And that's because what I'm doing is much more akin to corporate strategy or business analytics at any business, because fundamentally, we at the Garden and at the Bruins, we are a business like anybody else. We have a supply chain, we have products that fit into a portfolio that we sell to consumers through distribution channels that fall into segments with lifetime values. And we are not fundamentally that different from business analytics or business strategy at Procter & Gamble or PepsiCo or Apple. We just happen to have a kind of interesting product. But then again, those companies sell interesting products too, right? And so I think thinking about my role in my day-to-day, it's all about optimizing the business outcome for the things that generate us revenue and create value for our customers and our fans. And so what you ask what's similar and what's different, I would say what's similar at a macro level, we're solving the same problems that, not to pick on my friends at P&G in Cincinnati, but the same problems that they are. How do we, maximize profit and optimize revenue and build strategies and frameworks that set us up to be successful, not just today and tomorrow, but 10, 15, 20 years from now. So we're solving the same business problems. We have a slight unique and industry-specific twist on it, but every industry has that. And I would say what's a little bit different about ours is that we're selling live entertainment, and we're selling something that's fun, and we're selling something that a lot of what might drive someone to buy our product is something, again, I can't control. I can't control how good the team is or how well they're playing. So really what we're doing is building effective hedges against that, so that when the team is playing really, really well, we're capturing the moment, and we're improving, and we're building on that success on the ice or on the field. And when the team is maybe not playing quite as well, we're still being successful on the balance sheet and successful as a business. And so it's an interesting job, and it's one that allows me to apply the frameworks of making smart, sound business decisions using data to drive informed decision making, just like any other business would.
Now, I know you're now on the East Coast, but prior to that, in fact, when we met, you were in Arizona. And at that time, I think there was a move for the Coyotes from West Valley to East Valley. Did I remember that correctly? I would imagine that would be something that you would have gotten in the intersection on.
Yeah, so a huge project. I was with the Coyotes for 3 seasons. The first season we were playing in Glendale at what at the time was called Gila River Arena. Then we moved during my first off season to Tempe, and we played in Mullet Arena, which is where Arizona State was playing, and that was a huge project. I mean, a lot of what we were involved in is, we're still selling the same product, but we have a different set of parameters to optimize on. Two different stadiums, two pretty different sizes, two different situations, two different local amenities around the stadium, two different facilities, two different considerations with, what the fan journey might look like from when you leave your house to when you get back to attend one of our games. And so, yeah, I mean, I think a huge part of, well, the first season that I was there, of course, we were optimizing our business outcome in Glendale. And then after an off season, we were doing the same thing, but in Tempe, and it was a lot of fun. A lot of people in my industry, you could work in it for many, many years and never get to go through a stadium move, right? Or get to move to a new location. And of course it happens, new arenas open and things change, but getting to work on between my first and second season, that project of, okay, how do we continue to be successful, on the balance sheet and continue to grow as a business and hit the metrics that ownership expected of us, was a huge challenge in a fun way, right? It was a lot of problems that I'd never been asked to solve before in my career, and a lot of sort of learning as you go and figuring it out together. But I had a great team and I had a great group of colleagues, and happy to say that we spent two great seasons in Mullet Arena after I left, or after we left Glendale, excuse me.
So that's interesting. I want to pick up on something you said just now, is that you had a great team. Well, there's leading the team, there's hands-on. How does that fit together in a world like yours?
So one thing that I think is critically important to keep in mind is that if I were to think through, the comparables, again, I said, similar to business strategy and analytics at a PepsiCo or at an Apple, similar business function. Those companies are a little bit bigger than ours, but still big brand like ours. But the team that we have behind it is actually quite small. We tend to be a bit of a leaner industry in terms of the size of the group, and so the team might be 20, 30, 40 at some of our bigger contemporary colleague companies. But here, we're 5, 6, 10 people, right? And so I think there is a fair amount of, everyone has to do a little bit of everything. And of course, there's subspecializing, and there's some people who are better at coding, and some people who are better at building dashboards, and some people who are better at building models, and some people who are better at interpreting models. And so there's a little bit of all of that, but we all have to do a little bit of everything, right? And so I think what's kind of fun, to use a bad pun, we're all switch hitters, right? We all are tasked with getting our hands on a little bit of everything, and I think that actually makes us, in terms of resiliency against unforeseen challenges that might come up, because we've all at least got exposure and familiarity with what each of us is doing. That makes us a stronger team as a whole. It gives us a better appreciation for our colleagues and the value that they bring to the table. And it also allows us to, hey, Jim, you're kind of the model expert, and maybe I'm not, but you're just really underwater because of the models that you're being asked to build. So I can step in and I can lighten your load. I can take some of that off your plate. So I think, yeah, I mean, again, I've been fortunate. I've been a part of some really special teams in my career, and certainly at prior stops in my current one, that remains true.
So picking up on the word teams, I'm going to now switch what I mean by the word team, because in your world of sports, I know that there's leagues and then there's teams in the sports sense. And I'm wondering how that plays out from an analytics and strategy standpoint, the differences between those. Maybe you could enlighten me a little bit about that.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And I was very fortunate. I had a stop while I was in business school at the NFL at the league office in New York.
You're listening to the AI Master Group podcast.
I was very fortunate. I had a stop while I was in business school at the NFL at the league office in New York, and so have had some exposure to both the team and the league side. And I would say again, fundamentally high level business, trying to maximize profit, optimize revenue, sell the right products to the right consumers in the right manner. So high level, solving the same question. I think what's interesting. So the team, we obviously we own the product on the court or on the ice or on the field, and we sell tickets to come see it live, and we sell in some cases like in our league we also have a local media rights deal so that the local media can broadcast and we're able to monetize that, and we sell corporate partnerships at the team level. The official car salesperson of the Detroit Red Wings, the official coffee of the Miami Heat, right? Those are things that we sell at the team level. We sell merchandise specific to our specific team brand. At the league level, it's a little bit different. It's about how do they grow the game and how do they sell something in a media rights package. They're not selling individual tickets most of the time, although of course there's exceptions. Notable one, NFL sells individual tickets to the Super Bowl and to their international games in London and in Germany. But they're not as responsible for the individual teams. They're more responsible for the broader, higher level challenges around the sport or the live entertainment content. So think of them almost as a trade organization that sets the rules that we all play within on the ice or on the court, and also comes up with the best practices to make those longer term strategic decisions. So, at the team level, we might be deciding how are we going to sell sell tickets to 41 home games. At the league level, we might be deciding, is it a smart thing to play a preseason NHL game in Australia? Is it a smart thing for the NFL to play a game in Germany in addition to the London games that they've historically had, right? And so we're solving the same problem. We're selling different sides of the same product, and we have like a complementary responsibility to each other to grow our sport and grow our game on a global level, so that we are continuing to increase the value of our brands for our ownership groups.
That's great. So you did work for NFL, so you were really solving some of those problems. Like that one that you just described, is it a smart thing to do a preseason game in Australia? Is that a problem that you wrapped your arms around at one point?
Yeah, so when I was at the NFL, again, I was fortunate. I spent a summer there while I was in business school. And I did work on the international series game project a little bit at the time. Now they've played in many more locations, but at the time they were only doing a couple of games in London. And thinking through, okay, what does the future for international NFL games look like? Right, the upside is access to new fans, and thinking through how do we position this? How do we where do we want to play these games? Of course, there's a cost to it, right? You've got to bring two NFL teams in the middle of the season over to overseas to a foreign country, and you got to make sure that it's going to pay off. Are the people in the place you're going to play the game, like, does research show that they would be interested in this, and is not only going to, for that day, going to drive revenue for the league, but is there going to be a halo effect in that we've in that case grown the game of football? So yes, I did work on that. I think I was a lot less involved, but while I was at the Arizona Coyotes, we also played a preseason game in Australia, which was very exciting. It was the first time I believe that it had been done. And so again, I was at a team. I wasn't at the league at the time, and so a lot less involved with the strategic decision to do that, but still having seen both sides of that equation, was very cognizant of the value that it was bringing, not just to the Coyotes brand, but to the NHL's brand as a global business as well. And so, yeah, definitely, had a chance to get some exposure to people much smarter than me working on solving those problems, and got to be a very small part of putting that puzzle together.
That sounds fun. And prior to even that, I think you had interesting experiences to describe at Duke itself. Is that right?
Yes, I did go to Duke for undergrad. I'm a two-time offender. I actually went back for business school, and so I know that Duke is a very people have strong feelings about the school. Obviously, and the basketball team, and obviously mine are quite positive, having gone there. But yeah, while I was at Duke, I spent one summer interning with the marketing and sports promotions department, and so that was a great experience. I mean, just getting some exposure into how college athletics worked and what were the revenue considerations and cost considerations that went into optimizing that revenue, maximizing profit equation. What is the product that a college athletics department sells? And granted, I'm going to date myself, but it was almost 15 years ago now. But so the college world's changed quite a bit. But at the time, that was some exposure. And then I also was involved with the game operations process for the basketball team. Some people might be familiar with Duke students tenting out for games, and obviously some of the more high profile games are quite popular. One of the roles that I had as a student leader was being involved with that process and managing the logistics and day-to-day operations piece of the student involvement in Cameron Indoor to go to Duke basketball games.
Wow, interesting. So you're one of those people that got one of those career paths that you can put your finger on it and say, wow, I understand this. This is linear, more or less. It's like one thing building upon the other. And as I mentioned before, you've got this kind of dream jobs. Like everybody said, wow, I'd like to be Sam. But in addition to your dream job, one last thing I'd like to ask you about, because you alluded to it just now, and it reminded me, we did meet originally at a conference. It was, I think, November, December of last year, and it was great meeting you there, and because that's one. But what other things do you do that kind of help you to keep alert to what's happening in our industry?
Well, there are sort of three things that I find very value add about going to professional experiences like conferences, and I think those extend beyond conferences as sort of three pillars as well. And so, kind of thinking, why do you participate in professional development? Well, I think it's to learn new things. I think it's to meet smart people, and I think it's to be exposed to different ways of thinking. And so, going through each of those, of course, conferences, themselves. Learning new things is why you go. And but you gave a very interesting talk on future of AI and how we might be thinking about what that will look like. And obviously, the subject matter of these experiences is very, very informative and very important. I think it's always great to meet new people, whether that's in your field or outside of your field. You never know who you're going to strike up a friendship or a professional colleagueship with. And I've always enjoyed that element of getting out there and just meeting people doing different things in their field. And then being exposed to new and different ways of thinking. Cognitive diversity, there's been study after study that shows that teams excel when they have cognitive diversity and they have different ways of thinking. And I think a way to bootstrap that or force yourself to grow is to immerse yourself in these experiences where people are coming together and learning from each other and teaching each other. You're inevitably also going to not only meet the people, but be exposed to the way that they problem solve and approach challenges. And that is so important. And I think extending those three to like beyond a conference, obviously learning things is important. And I'm someone who, likes to be challenged in understanding how things work. And yes, I very much enjoy learning about things that are relevant to my industry, but I also, love learning about things that are not relevant to my industry just because I think it makes you a more well-rounded person. And so I always try to learn new things and force myself to try new things that are going to force me to grow. I think meeting interesting people, again, it doesn't have to only happen at conferences. It's not that infrequent, especially if you live in a big city like Boston, where you'll come across someone who might be a tangential connection or might just be someone you just met. And just getting exposure to people who are doing different things is so important and doesn't have to only happen in a formal professionalized setting. And then I think, again, just forcing yourself to grow your cognitive problem solving diversity skills or skills of, how understanding different ways, we all have different ways of approaching a problem. And, we could be the two of us given a challenge to try to solve for today. And we'd probably approach it differently, and we'd probably be better for it for having insight into how each other approaches that. So I think that, to me, the things that I think about are, am I learning something new? Am I meeting smart people? And am I being exposed to different ways of thinking? And if I can say yes to all three of those, the outcome will work itself out in a positive way.
Those are great words of advice. And I do remember you're one of those people that was meeting people and kind of taking full advantage of that opportunity to network, which is really inspiring. Well, Sam, it was so great to get a chance to learn more about the kind of work that you do. It's a very fascinating field, and I think we're just very lucky to have had a chance to get a little peek inside of your world. So thank you so much for that.
Well, thank you, Jim. It was a pleasure. I admire the work you do, and I had a lot of fun. It's great to catch up with you as always, and appreciate what you do.
Great. Thank you so much, Mark. I appreciate that. You've been listening to the AI Master Group podcast. I'm your host, Jim Griffin. Until next time, stay curious and stay in front.